Boston, 18th century's British jewel? A lively port, mixing Puritan faith and business drive. This peninsula in Massachusetts Bay was more than just a harbor. It was a key spot where old ways met the new frontier. A city of wood and brick, shaped by trade and colonial rule. By the mid-1700s, Boston neared a major change, torn between loyalty and a growing wish for freedom. Just one generation stood between its peak and a violent clash, leading to a completely new world order. Choices made in these alleys would change the city and spark a fire across the continent. We use modern tools with old maps and drawings to rebuild Boston, exactly as it was, exploring in ways artists couldn't imagine. We aim to step inside the past, walking the docks and markets and quiet squares as they were 3 centuries ago. We'll pass by buildings now gone and stand where steeples still watch. Stay till the end, and we'll revisit these spots today to see what time erased, buried, and what still stands as proof of that crucial century. 1700s Boston starts with the Shoremount Peninsula itself, a land strip called the Neck. In the early 1700s, the sea ruled everything. To know the city, you must know its water connection. The harbor was its front door, and the long wharf, built around 1700, its grand hall, reaching far into the deep. This huge wooden structure, with its warehouses, let big ships dock and unload right in town. Along the waterfront, the air was rich with salt, pine tar, and spices. Hear the constant clatter of hooves and shouts of sailors in many tongues. Inland from the docks, the city shows its Puritan roots. Streets aren't grand like London's. They grew naturally. Following old cow paths, the north end was packed, a maze of houses with overhangs. Here, rich merchants lived near the tradesmen who built their wealth. The Old North Church, built in 1723, began to stand out, its steeple a beacon and a symbol of Anglican influence, slowly challenging the old Puritan ways. In these early years, the city felt solid, rich, and stable under British rule. By the 1740s and 50s, Boston reached its colonial peak. Over 15,000 people lived there, a major city in North America. Faneuil Hall, a gift in 1742, from merchant Peter Faneuil, became the new center of city life. Picture the ground floor filled with a busy public market. Food sellers and fishmongers competed, while upstairs, the city's voters met to discuss local laws. This building was key for commerce and politics, a place where the crown's interests and the people's mostly agreed. The city's wealth showed in New Georgian homes in the South End and near Beacon Hill. Elegant brick mansions with balanced windows replaced older, disorganized wooden structures. Seeds of conflict were sown. The city was a pressure cooker. On one side, the royal governor and his staff, representing King George's full power. On the other, educated professionals and laborers who saw themselves as Englishmen with rights. Boston's taverns became hotbeds of new ideas. The Green Dragon Tavern, hidden in the North End, was known as the Revolution's headquarters. In its dim, smoky rooms, groups like the Sons of Liberty met. They weren't just complaining men. They were organized political groups. They read pamphlets, discussed rising taxes on molasses and paper, and the increasing military presence. As the 1760s went on, Boston shifted from prosperity to occupation. The arrival of British Army regiments in 1768 turned the town into a garrison. Redcoats were common sights, drilling on the common. This was a direct challenge. Imagine passing the old State House, seat of British government, seeing the royal coat of arms, only to find bayonets blocking your path. Tension became physical. Every soldier-citizen interaction risked violence. That violence erupted on March 5, 1770. The event happened on King Street, outside the customs house. It was a cold, snowy night. A lone British soldier was bothered by young men and dock workers. Insults and snowballs quickly led to chaos as more soldiers and citizens arrived. Shots rang out in the confusion. 5 men lay dead or dying. The Boston Massacre, was a turning point. Recreating this scene shows the city's cramped streets and how fast a spark could ignite this close community. Though there was brief peace after the massacre, issues remained. The focus returned to the harbor in December 1773. The issue was tea and the East India Company's monopoly. The Boston Tea Party was a disciplined act of defiance. Imagine the quiet at Griffin's Wharf as men, some disguised as Mohawk Indians, boarded 3 ships. Over 3 hours, they smashed 342 chests of tea into the saltwater. There was no looting, no other damage. It was a targeted protest against British policy. They worked in silence, watched by thousands from the docks. Britain's response was fast and harsh. The intolerable acts closed Boston's port, crippling its economy. The Long Wharf, once so busy, became eerily quiet. Grass grew in streets. Thousands fled for the country. Those who stayed faced starvation and martial law. The city became a fortress, General Gage fortifying the neck, isolating Boston. In spring 1775, tension peaked. From the Old North Church steeple, 2 lanterns signaled British troops were moving by water to Lexington and Concord. The American Revolution had begun, with Boston at ground zero. The city's struggle climaxed at Bunker Hill in June 1775. Though the battle was across the water, Bostonians watched from rooftops. Imagine Charlestown Peninsula in flames, naval cannons roaring, and redcoats marching up the hill. The British victory's cost was huge, proving the militia could fight the world's best army. For nearly a year, Boston was under siege by George Washington's army. When the British left on March 17, 1776, they left a city physically intact but socially and politically changed. The Revolution brought a new order. Boston was no longer a colony. It was a leader in a new republic. The 1780s and 90s saw massive rebuilding. The city's hills, once defensive, became obstacles to growth. Beacon Hill's top was removed to fill coves, reclaiming land that would double the city's size. The old narrow alleys gave way to wider streets of the Federal period. The Great Fire of 1794 sped this change, clearing old wooden buildings and replacing them with sturdy brick ones still seen today. Comparing maps from 1700 to 1800 shows amazing transformation. The jagged peninsula became a more structured city. But the city's heart remained in its landmarks. The old State House, once a symbol of royal power, became the state legislature. Faneuil Hall was expanded by Charles Bulfinch for the growing population. The 1700s legacy was etched in these buildings. A century defined by the fight to be a community, a people, and a nation. Now we journey to the present to see what remains. At the Long Wharf site today we see modern skyscrapers and the Big Dig. Yet the ghost of the 1715 structure still guides the water's path. The harbor is now yards further out from landfill, but the massacre marker remains on State Street, in the shadow of the old State House. It's striking to stand on the modern financial district ground and realize 300 years ago, you'd be on a steep hill or in icy tidal water. In the North End, the past feels closer. The Paul Revere House, built around 1680, is the oldest home, its dark timber contrasting with modern restaurants and apartments. The Old North Church still overlooks the harbor, though its skyline is now filled with steel and glass. Walking the Freedom Trail today is a walk through the 1700s, but it takes effort to see past the modern world to the city of wood, the sea air, and the weight of the Revolution. Boston is a city that builds on itself, layer by layer. The 1700s provided the foundation, not just in buildings but identity. Debates in Faneuil Hall and meetings at the Green Dragon Tavern created a political culture still present. It's a place honoring its history while reinventing itself. The North End's narrow lanes remind us the past is never truly gone. It's simply the ground for the present. As we finish our reconstruction, we sense the immense change in just 100 years. Boston began as a loyal English town and ended as a defiant American city. We've walked streets that no longer exist and stood in buildings that changed world history. The 1700s were a time of great upheaval, but also great creation. We hope this 18th century journey gives you a new view of the streets you walk daily. History isn't just dates and names. It's a lived experience, a physical space we can inhabit through memory and technology. What city or era should we reconstruct next? Any specific neighborhoods or events you'd like to see? Let us know below. Together, we'll keep stepping into the worlds that shaped our own.